Hi, my name is Shawna Ristic, and I had a near-death experience when I was 19. I was living in Kansas City. Time it happened, I was living with my parents, and I jumped in the car to drive to a football game in Minnesota. I was flying to Minnesota with a client or a customer from the bar I worked at, and I was out on the highway and I was speeding doing like 75, which is not that speeding now. But back then it was, I think the speed limit was 60. This was on Christmas Day of 1990. And I uh, got up on the highway and I was zooming down the road. About after when I had to use this car phone, it was a big bag plugged into the cigarette lighter. And I thought, boy, I better call this friend of mine and let them know I'm on my way. I'm going to be there. I'm just going to be a little bit late. So I bent over and I bag phone and I plugged it into the cigarette lighter and I was trying to call him, but as I came up from picking up the bag phone, um, I came close to hitting a car I was passing and I was also going over a bridge or just went over a bridge. So I swerved to miss the car and I flipped my car end over end across the median and across the other two lanes of traffic. This was on the highway on the interstate of 4 lane. And they found me on the other side of the highway face down. And there's a lot of miracles that happened that day on this side of things. The car behind me was a nurse. The next car from the other direction was a nurse. There were two nurses immediately on site. I don't remember any of this. I was not in conscious very early on in the whole experience. But I do remember sometimes memories come back when I sit with the experience and I meditate with it. And I have over time remembered being kicked out of body and looking down at and seeing lots of lights. It was very hazy. I think it was a cold winter. It was Christmas Day. I mean, cold and kind of gray and the lights. And then I remember coming back into body and feeling like, hey, this thing is pointless. I couldn't move it. I couldn't do anything. It was just like a shell and thinking this thing has no life in it. There's no point in being in here. And it was just this discombobulation. And then I got back out of body. And I don't really remember anything from that point. They transported my body and my mind and body were together to the Princess Hospital. And knowing that if they had gone the extra 20 minutes to the other hospital, you know, that I wouldn't have made it. So they transferred me back to Ottawa because there was a doctor who was there twice a month that was able to handle intense trauma. And she happened to be there. They took me there and they stabilized me as best they could. And then they life-flighted me in the city to research medicine. You know, and during that time, well, what I remember is from the other side is waking up in this really bright white lit room. And there were 6 beings. They looked like they could have been humans. They were human shaped with the head, shoulders, neck thing. And they were standing on either side. They were very tall. They were very bright white light. I don't necessarily remember even like any distinct facial features, just more like they were glowy. And they slid their hands underneath me and they lifted me up. And I sat up and I realized I was sitting up out of my body. And then I was just standing and I was in this room with them. And I remember embracing them and just feeling the love from them and the love of them and the okayness with them. The word, the guidance and this kinship with them was there. Like family, it's real family before what we all hope for here. It doesn't have all the baggage around it, all the judgments about the expectations around it. It's more just everything's okay. And we're glad to see you. And really welcome, really cared for, really, really nice. And can't say I really wanted to leave that feeling. And they showed me what it is I had come to do. I understood over time. I think we all have amnesia when we get here. None of us remember what really came to do, but over time it's come back, and I remember it all happened as like an instantaneous download telepathically, and just a packet of knowing. And so it showed me what it was I came to do. And as I said, I wish that I remembered that wholeheartedly. It comes as a telepathic download. and just an instantaneous knowing where you see it all at once, but you put it into linear time filled with words is very challenging. So that I can communicate this to people. Over time, I've come to understand what it is I came to do and understand the messages that I received there. And I understood part of what I was here to do was to represent these beings. I'm the one who just come and do the body here on Earth. It's not an easy thing to do, as we all know. And and then they showed me, and I'll go back into that in a minute. Then they showed me what it is that I had done up to this point, and on the path into leading into this mission, which I've come to understand is really helping people to wake up and remember who they are and move back to that light that we are. To liberate a lot of us. We're stuck here. And so they showed me what I had done up to this point, and it was like flashes from my life coming through and lining up before me. And I could at the same time remember what I had done in that moment and feel what the frustration or what I was saying or what I was trying to say, express. But I could also feel how my words had landed on that person and how that made them feel. And there was a lot of, I'd say at the time, there was a lot of almost guilt or regret about the way I had made others feel, especially a friend of mine. He was always a really close friend, and we always were a little bit more than friends, but I wouldn't allow anything more. I was also modeling at the time, and I was trying to get this modeling career. And so I didn't want to get tied down, and there was all these dynamics. And I just really saw how I hurt him and also my family and just different things. And I think someone had asked me once, well, help me see the good things we did too. So I think those were there too, but it's always the contraction that really sticks with you. It's always the thing that hurts or that caused a contraction or a recoil in someone that really seemed to, at least for me, and I think for most of us, it's that way, to stick with me and realize, wow, I didn't know that I had done that. And it wasn't a judgment. I'd say that that's what probably a lot of religions who call the judgment day are talking about, because it does, there's a sense of regret around it, but it doesn't feel like judgment. It feels like the only one judging me is me, that whole situation. So they showed me all that I've done up to this point, and then what was possible in the future. Had I done soul damage? Had I gotten to the point where I had created too much negativity that was going to imprint on my soul that wouldn't make it possible forward with the mission that we had come here to? There were moments on the other side where I could see that it was me trying to make sense of what is going on this 3D side too. What's going on over there? And I do have one memory of like waking up and I'm looking down from the corner of my hospital room at my body that's in the bed, and my mom is holding my hand and bowing her head towards it, sort of there with me. And I remember feeling how she felt. This feeling like, wow, I couldn't, I did that. I created that much of a contraction. And that's something else they showed me was that we're all connected. It's like looking down, when I talk about it, like looking down out of an airplane at the city at lights at night, and you see all these lights out there, and each of us is a light, and we're all connected through this invisible matrix. It's all these lights like in the city. And when one light goes down, it can create a power surge that goes through the entire matrix. Even in other cities or other places, and it can create an entire surge. And understood that in my particular case, if my light went out, that it would create a surge like that. And realized I couldn't do that. Couldn't do that. I didn't realize that I mattered that much. Each of us matters that much. I didn't realize that I had actually said to a friend of mine, same friend I spoke about before, maybe several months before the accident, that I was ready to go. I knew I came here for a reason, but this place was really hard, and it was really hard to be here, and the way people treat each other. And then I reneged my mission, and I had the opportunity, and I realized the magnitude of saying no, like saying no. All these people who you don't even know them yet are here pulling for you. Saying no to that leaves a big ripple in the field, and I couldn't do that. And they showed me even how it would affect my brother and who he would be and how he would even be with women. Never, maybe not after losing his sister like that. And the next thing I really remember is starting to wake up. I remember laying in bed and I opened my eyes and my friend was, his name was Patrick. He was there kind of holding vigil. You could only have a few people, one or two people every 30 or I'm sorry, 3 times a day come in to carry. When you're in there, you're mostly by yourself. Although they did choose to play music for me. But the music they played was Enya, which I thought was a really interesting choice to sort of bring me back. But anyway, I remember seeing my friend Patrick there and he was sleeping. He kind of had his eyes closed. And I remember wishing him awake, willing him awake. I broke my chin on a little bits in my jaw. And I had 6 broken ribs, 4 front back, punctured a lung, pelvis, head injuries, other stuff, other stuff that I don't even remember that will probably come back later. So I was in bad shape and couldn't speak and couldn't talk. And one of the first times I came out of the coma and I remember looking at him and willing him awake. And then he woke up and he's like, "You're awake." I mumbled something. I think he thought I wanted to know what happened. And they did. I wanted to know on this particular, like, what's going on over here? Because I know what I've experienced over there. It's pretty great. But I really have to come back. He started telling me about the accident and about what happened. And I don't really remember a lot of what he said. But what I remember was that the energy in the room, and I talk about energy as like, it's like a space, the ethers, the fabric, that the air, not even just the air, it's like the whole ambiance of the room was that love space that I felt on the other side, that it was here. It's that pregnant possibilities, all creativity that could happen, right? It's total okayness. It's total love. It's total care and wanting this for each of us to blossom and to become who we are, the truth of who we are in it. And that was the fabric behind it. And that's the fabric behind everything. And that is what we come from. And I looked at him and I could see it in him too. I could see it in his eyes, because you see in the eyes this light, this truth of who someone is. It comes shining through, and I could see it in him too. That love space, that truth, that okayness that was coming through. And I realized, wow, it's here and it's in us, each of us. And then I couldn't hold it anymore. I was just really moved by the magnitude of it. And I knew then that what I was experiencing on the other side, it's an illusion that it's somewhere else, and that it does exist here. And it is here. It's the foundation of everything here. It's that which we all come from. It's just we've all forgotten where we come from, and we've gotten wrapped up in the contraction and in the manipulation or whatever else it is of those energies that are drawing us out of ourselves and into this lie that we're something else. And that the truth is that we're all love. The truth is we're all light. And that's the essence of who we are. No matter how long it's been since you've been that, you've really forgotten that that's the truth of it all. And I saw it in that, and I saw it in that moment in the space. Then I couldn't hold it anymore. Because frankly, it's very hard to stay in body. So bravo for every one of you that are hanging out in your body and in this crazy mind that we all have, each of us has, because frankly, getting in the body and getting in here is not easy. It is much easier to go. So I couldn't hold it anymore. I just couldn't stay in, and I let go and fell back. And that's what it feels like. You fall into that super conscious space, I guess we can call it, beyond consciousness, or it's still conscious, beyond physical space, super physical space, is that you fall back and you kind of let go and you realize you're sort of suspended in the space. It's not a free fall into nothingness. Although it's nothingness, just suspension. And there you are in this consciousness in the middle of all that space, just no longer holding on to the reins of reality and mind and just awareness. And go back into that space. The next thing I knew, I was in a group of these beings. There were 12 of them at the time. There were 6 that lifted me out. And someone had asked me a very interesting question at one, like, who are the other 6? Because there were 12 at the end. And I got real curious about that and started asking them about that. That's where I've learned that the 6 are what I call, we have these multiples, whether it's 6 or another number, what I call the tribe. And the tribe are those beings who come from, let's say, the same vibration as you or the same planet. At easier concept to understand. And that they are like your real family, that they agree to accompany each of us on our pathway here, on our journey throughout life. They're so close to us that we often don't feel them as separate from ourselves. But they're the ones who help make serendipities happen, line things up. They listen to our wishes and how to give us extra energy to make that fruition. Pennies in the way. They used to give me, how to give me playing cards, my random playing cards, or whatever that is for you. That's how they work with you. And the other 6, I have come to understand, are more like angels and guides and the masters that are in a maybe different level of consciousness, that are sort of like consultants, like advisors, that they also advise and are consultants in multiple people's councils. All this tribe, I call them my council. They are in multiples of those, not necessarily just specific to each person. And so the 12 that were there were the 6 that were my tribe, or my council. And then the other 6 of my council, which are, I don't know them specifically, but you go in and interrogate that if I wanted to, but they're more of a universal consciousness, universal working with multiple people. In any case, they were debating whether I should go or stay, whether I had said that I was done. And I had this journey with them and seeing what I'd done at the point, seeing what I'd come for, and seeing what could be possible. Could I relive in this body, make this work again? Was there enough vitality? And I had my journey with them, and now it was their decision. It felt a long time like with their choice. And I could just wait and decide and hear what their decision was. And then the next thing I know, I'm waking up and I'm kind of coming back into body. One of the first real memories I have of that is this time I talked about with Patrick. The second one is waking up once and they were strapping my body into a wheelchair. I thought it was completely ridiculous because my body was stiff as a board after being unconscious for, a month in a bed. And they were like strapping me into it. I felt like, I was just so sure that I was gonna slide right out and it was gonna roll right over me. And it just felt completely ridiculous. But anyway, they strapped me into this chair and they wheeled me down to some parallel bars. I remember that like my body was able to walk. I was wobbly. They had me all strapped up and all these things because I really couldn't walk. All strapped up and all these things. You were like tottering around and just kind of observing and being like, this is completely silly. I'm not even hardly in this body. Like, it's just like you push a button like a robot and it just goes. And then the PT was over, they put me back in the chair and they were wheeling me down the hallway. And I remember we were going to pass another person in the wheelchair. And I remember as we got closer and closer, we're thinking, ow, what happened to that person? And she really messed up. Holy crap, what happened to her? And then we got closer and closer and I realized it was a mirror. And what have I done? And then got right out of body at that point, went back out of body, and I was a lot to handle. And the next thing I remember really is waking up in the ambulance as they were putting me into the ambulance to transfer me to a hospital, to Meadowbrook Hospital in Gardner, Kansas, which is a neurological hospital. There's a lot of serendipity and a lot of grace that really made it possible for me. Eternally grateful for it. And so they took me there, and that's probably when I started really waking up. But I have to tell you, Nothing was the same. It was the ending of me and the beginning of a new me. At first, I believed that everything I was the reason for this accident, and that I was a bad girl, and that I needed to, button up all the way up and not, cuss words were not even impossible in my vocabulary, and I had to be a really good girl and prim and proper, that was maybe the way to go. And now looking back at that time of my life, I see that really it was an energetic thing. After this experience, I mean, I wasn't a very energetic, sensual type, but after this experience, it's like something awakened and I became hypersensitive to all the energies around me. And energy, when I talk about energy, it's light, it's closely linked. Our energetic bodies are closely linked to emotional bodies. So what goes through the emotions kind of vibrates through into the field. And I'm very, very sensitive to that. And so things like cuss words or that harshness that comes behind those cuss words, that vibration, were so shocking to my system and so hard for me to handle that I, really tried to do whatever I could to create a persona that kept those things away. Impossible to do on planet Earth. I mean, we all know that. Because there's so many things here that we've been taught that the harshness is the way. We've been taught that it's about contraction and figuring out what's wrong and digging in it and trying to make that better. And that just brings more attention to the harshness, like war. Whoever decided that was a way, the most ridiculous thing that we do to each other. It's just completely ridiculous. And we create war every day in our words, in our actions, our frustrations, rather than acknowledging and being with ourselves and loving space, loving body, and loving mind. It's doing the best it can to keep us here because you need a body and a mind to be on the planet. Rather than just being an appreciation of that and understanding, hey, I'm feeling frustrated. Instead, we project it all out of us to each other. And we've just been taught the harshness is the way, and it's not. It's not the truth of who we are, and it's not the way to be. I graduated high school the year before the accident, and I had been modeling high school. I was in Kansas, so the modeling industry in Kansas was not that hopping. And it's especially not hopping for someone like myself who was a little bit more European looking, a little bit more exotic. Kansas market really liked that sort of blonde, voluptuous, cheerleader sort of image. I was not that. So I working with trying to get to other agencies, and this is pre-internet, wasn't as easy as it is today. So I was working on going to different events to get seen by agencies. One in Milan that I was interested in, someone in Chicago, working in that field. And then I graduated high school and went to college because that's what you're supposed to do. Didn't really know why. I thought, okay, well, I'll just study fashion or I was really interested in my modeling career. So that was where I was focused. But I was going to school because you were supposed to. And moved out on my own to be sort of this independent woman, moved in with another model in Kansas City. And we were kind of making a go at it. Then I was working as a bridal consultant at a mall and just to make extra money, to make period money and eating a lot of baked potatoes because I was really broke. And then I lost my job. And a woman in my class was like, hey, I know how you can make a lot of money, but you got to be willing to. I'm brave. I'm courageous. So she had me come join her at her work, which is a strip bar in the small, rural, hidden hole in the wall in Lawrence, Kansas. And so I went there and I thought, oh, I'm just going to dance on stage. I'm not going to do anything, table dances or whatever it is for individually for the men. And then I realized you won't make money if you don't do that. So I just jumped in, and there was a lot of shame around that for a long time, a lot of embarrassment, because I think I really felt like I took my power back in that space in many ways. I was going out to bars and meeting guys, and they all were doing what they do in their youthful, testosterone-y ways, grabbing me. Maybe they would try to come on me or whatever, or sometimes it would work, and sometimes we'd end up hooking up, and it just always felt used and always felt like they got what they wanted, and then that was it. I guess in some ways the bar was a way for me to take that power back. I could play with that seduction. I could play with some duality. They could pay me for it. And that was kind of where my head was with it. And it kept me in great shape. And it let me have enough money to be able to leave and do the modeling on the side. And so that's kind of where my head was. And I thought, I also had a feeling before that that I really needed to dive into this seedier side of life, this more dark, robust, this more darker side of life. So I dove in and went into the bar. And after I did it for about a year before the accident. I think after a while, it started to weigh on me, just being that object all the time. And anytime I meet someone outside of work, once they knew what I did, that's all they wanted to see. Or I'd have to hide it. Couldn't tell my family, couldn't tell certain people about it. And so I think that it just really started weighing on me, and it gave me a really jaded view, especially of men. I started realizing that to do what I really came here to do, the planet and what I really wanted to do, I would really need to go back to school because I needed to find a way to craft and cultivate my thoughts and put them into words. So I had moved home with my parents right before then, but in the meantime, I was still working in the bar. I just moved home with them. And at the same time, these men would come and they wanted just to sit and talk to me. You would be amazed how many men out there don't have a woman that they can talk to in their lives and get her. I had a lot of people that just wanted to talk to me. So a lot of these men, they were businessmen and they were going on trips and they wanted some company. And one of them was just like, hey, I'm going to get really bored. And well, I'll go with you. And it's on the up and up. I get my own room. We're only doing it that way. And you say you're bored. And so I'm just going as a companion. Okay. And so I went on that trip. And that was probably a month or so. It was probably November, I think. And of 93. And on that trip, I had my own room. I had insisted my own hotel room. And we went and took some dinners, and it was nice after he'd work all day. And then one evening, he called me into his room, and it was very clear that he wanted what he couldn't get in the bar. And I was trying to navigate that. And then kind of pushed me on the bed. And at some point, he realized, that wasn't what I wanted. And I had gone really deep inside and just sort of got out of body at that point. And he had the grace to say, oh, you don't want this. Go back to your room. And so I did. And really grateful that's how that ended. And I went back to my room and I was like, what the heck am I doing? 18-year-old girl just on this trip with this man. How far was I going to go with this? Was I going to move into high-dollar prostitution? I felt like, becoming a call girl of some sort or going on these trips and getting paid. I felt like if I were to do that route, go into pay, that it would leave soul damage and that would change my relationship with sexuality and sexuality permanently. I was contemplating all that as I was laying in my bed that night. And I thought, well, I've got this other trip coming up and he's also with a customer, but he's a friend of the owner. So maybe it's going to be better. I'll say visit with the strip bar owner's friend. So, yeah, but that's the things, as a 19-year-old girl, you think you can pinch yourself out because we can rationalize anything. And so I was debating whether I should, I was trying to think about like, well, how when you're going to go do something, you picture yourself doing it and you kind of picture about how you wanted it to go. And I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to get in my car. I'm going to drive in. I'm going to get out and do stuff. I'm going to do it really fast. And I'm going to get out of there. Well, I couldn't even see myself going to Minnesota to the Chiefs game. And I'm like, I can't even visualize how I want that to go. I can't even envision it. That's weird. And then I thought, well, let me see if I can even see myself going to the airport. And I couldn't even see myself getting on the plane and being at the airport. And I was like, wow, how can I visualize that? And then I kind of fell asleep with all that on my head. What am I doing here? Like, how far am I going to go with all this soul damage, that awareness? This whole, I can't even see myself getting to the airport. What's going on? And I fell asleep, woke up in the middle of the night, and I thought, I'm going to be in a car accident, and I'll be lucky if I make it. It'll be a miracle if I make it. And then I thought, oh no, wait a minute. I don't want to do any self-fulfilling prophecies, put that right out of your head. You're not going to do that, that's just, whatever. And then lo and behold, on my way Christmas Day to the airport to meet this other customer, fly to Minnesota for the Chiefs game with him, and that's in the accident. So that's who I was before. And afterwards, everything was different. Everything's, it was no longer that lost little girl. It's now this presence and this awareness. However, I got out of the hospital and they said 4 to 6 months to rehab, enough to get out of there. And I got out in 4 weeks, went home and to my parents' house and started working really hard to just be able to stay in body all day and stay awake all day. But by August, I was living on my own again, and I was back in school, and I was driving again, and got a job as a waitress at a pancake shop that I worked at the night shift on the weekends to make money to go to school and support myself. And, started trying to figure out this life stuff. So then I got the job and I started watching all these other people on the planet. Okay, I clearly messed something up. And like this first life thing, I didn't do it right. I got into this car accident and it was like a restart. It was a total rebirth. Even my mama said it. She said, we could tell when you start to be able to feed yourself again, or you start to be able to move a body part again. So it would just come back, and watching someone be reborn. And so if I did it wrong then all these other people must be doing something right. Let me look at them to see what I need. Oh, I need a career path, a job to support myself. I need a boyfriend or some partner, significant other to help me feel that connection. Okay, got that. And I need housing. And I had all those things, I got all those things together. And I thought, well, maybe it was a job in the pancake shop. Someone suggested I apply for a position in this fine dining restaurant on the plaza in Kansas City. And I thought, okay, that's probably a little more my speed. So I went there, got the job instantly. After about a year's time, I became the assistant manager. And I was like, okay, so I've got all these things I was supposed to want, and I'm miserable. I was looking back, I see I was so homesick. I was so homesick for that loving space that I just didn't see. I mean, I would cry for hours. The harshness that we do to each other in this world, what you see on the news alone is enough to break your heart. Why do we do that? So my boyfriend at the time knew a massage therapist, and I didn't even know that was a real career option. This was 20 years in Kansas City. I thought it was maybe cover up for prostitution, along those lines, like many people thought at the time. So she was going to teach him some massage techniques, and we did one session, and she and I really hit it off and had a real connection. We had a lot of similarities in traumas that we'd had in our lives. Then we couldn't figure out the rest of the timing. In any case, long story short, he ended up giving the rest of the time he had for me. And I went to her and I said, why am I so miserable? Why am all these things that all these other humans tell me I'm supposed to have that will make me happy, and I'm miserable? And she said, well, maybe you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I was like, what should I be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? And she said, well, maybe you should check out this massage. And every day I throw something and out of the blue, I'll go check it out. And as soon as I walked in, something in me was said, I did start a massage school, within a year or so. And at that point, I also started going through this depression and, again, having all the things we're supposed to want. And I don't know why I'm so depressed and having these thoughts about ending it all. And massage school was a good start in that, but I still felt the depression. And then I started journaling, and I would just start writing whatever was on my mind and just start free flowing and just letting it out. Cause I didn't know who to talk to about all this. I mean, I couldn't talk to my parents after all they went through all that to help pull me through. I mean, they spent, months of just camping out in the waiting room to see me 3 times a day. I couldn't do that to them. Couldn't talk to them about my suicidal thoughts. And I couldn't, and I wasn't gonna actually act on those thoughts, a longing in me. And so I started journaling, and after a while, it would just flow out. Like I wouldn't even edit, or I wouldn't even monitor what was coming out of the pen. And then I can go back and reread it, and I noticed something started responding. Something started answering my question. And that's where I started communicating with the counsel that I met on the other side, but while I'm on this side. And so for probably a decade, 10 years, I mostly communicated with them through journaling, mostly in the evenings at the end of my day. And they were my biggest helpers, my biggest guidance, giving me clarity on what's happening, in the bigger picture here for me. And then they would also come in oftentimes in session. Once I graduated from massage school, it took about 3 years. Then I quit my job and I moved instantly back to Lawrence, Kansas. I enrolled at the university because I was determined to get a bachelor's degree because I was determined to prove Dr. Strong said that I would never be able to live on my own again. I'd always need assistance. I'd be mentally handicapped or along those lines. And so, moved to Lawrence and started my practice. And through the grace of God and a bunch of serendipity, became full. And I basically doing that for 28 years now. So what would happen would be sometimes in sessions, they would just start telling me things. I would just know stuff about people, or I would just see where the blockage is emotionally for them, or my hands would just feel where it was we needed to go to release the contraction. And amazing things would happen. People would have big insights. They would suddenly understand that they needed to retire, what they needed to do with their lives, or, I guess that's why people come to me in transitions. And so whether it be physical release or emotional release or a knowingness, or something would happen. And didn't always happen for everybody. Not everybody was in a space they could receive that. And not everybody I could feel that connected to, but it happened for a lot of people. And so I did that for about a decade with about 3 years of a break or 4 years of a break where I went and lived in France for 4 years to finish. I got my master's degree in communication. And then came back and started my practice again. And then about 10 years ago, Spirit told me it was time for me to meet my husband. Well, I'd already met my husband during that time with our child. So my husband was traveling on a spiritual path, for his teacher during that time. And I was home taking care of the baby. And then sometimes Spirit said, it's time for you to meet his teacher. So we came to meet, and I'll just cut the story short, but through a bunch of serendipity, we ended up getting involved in a project around the near-death experience. Because lo and behold, it wasn't about him at all coming to California. It ended up being about me. It came for this project that he was a part of, and then it folded within maybe 6 months of being here. And then I just started working and hustling and moving towards my business. And now I've got my business stabilized, and I've got an office in Santa Cruz, an office in Los Gatos, where I meet in person with people, do hands-on work and, guidance through what I see intuitively, psychically, you can even call it that. And then I also work over distance with people. I've started because of COVID, working more distance-wise, because I did do a lot of presentations and speaking in person. And then with COVID, everything went online. And so I've done quite a few working with people at a distance online and just seeing what I see intuitively and more psychically, and just helping them to direct their lives. I think that, something that I've been really looking at lately is this whole idea around the contraction. I mean, I teach workshops and I teach people how to tap into their intuition. And a good part of my intuition or my classwork is helping us to remember the truth of who we are and drop into that right self, and that self that's here in this body and mind, rather than just getting out of the body and mind. It's here with this body and mind, because while there's a lot of us in spiritual circles who talk about this being an illusion, and while that is the case, it doesn't mean that it's not real in its own existence, its own dimension. This 3D dimension exists as it is, and that we all are in these minds and bodies and here in this planet. And we have picked up a lot of programming that has become, that we, I believe, as a collective, have created this programming, and how it's kind of become a system that just kind of rolls on its own. And that is always looking for the contraction, always looking for what's wrong, always looking that we need to fix ourselves. And while, if you're new on the path of self-work and you're new on the path of self-discovery and spirituality, yes, you do need to look at what's going on, where the contraction is within you, what talented things are maybe still undigested that need to be explored, help you realize a depth of yourself that you didn't know before. You do need to do those things. But we're not all broken. We're not all broken. Some point, for those of you who've been on the path for a while, some point for those of you who are the healers, who are doing the healing work, at some point it's time to recognize that maybe we're not broken, and that these things that happen to us maybe are just things that happened to give us the flavor of who we are in this physical existence this time around, but they do not define who you are as the essence, as the spiritual being who came here to be in this mind body at this particular moment, who dropped into this biological lineage that you dropped into because it could give you messages, could give you assistance. And that's a great thing. And that you've done that and that you're doing that, but that doesn't mean that you're broken because you don't fit in with it. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you because you're different. And it doesn't mean that you always have to be looking for the contraction, looking for that place in you that's the knot that needs to be untied. Yes, if you haven't done that, do that. But if you've been doing that for a while, like a lot of us, then this is for you. Follow and step into the truth of who you are, because we are really that light inside, even if there's all that contraction and darkness, and even if that's all you can see around you. You, that truth is who you are. That light is who you are. It's right here inside. And only when we dive into that can we then bring that forward. And we don't bring that forward as something you have to give outside of ourselves, because we've all been taught that about love. Love is something you have to give and get, and it is not. So love is a state of being. So you drop into that loving state of being. And when you are that, then everybody around you benefits. But when they leave and you don't lose it. You stay because you're that space. And that's the truth. And imagine that contraction thing. Sorry, I think I digress, if you don't mind. Um, I do think that we've all been taught that the system that we've created has taught us to go to the doctor, they're going to look for what's wrong with you. If you go to your therapist, they're going to look for what's wrong with you and dig in that in the sores. If you you watch TV, every story is about what's wrong and how to fix it. It's just this emphasis on the contraction, the restriction. And what about love? What about the expansion? What if we didn't talk about world when we talked about who is creating more love? What if we talked about who was actually following the bliss? What if we talked about who was actually following their guidance? And hey, did you see that person? They just reached out and left. I mean, there are places that are doing it. There are enough for Instagram and for even Facebook at times, that are doing those things. And for UTN, it's doing those things. But in each of our lives, if we could just retrain our mind, because minds are just doing what they do because it's what we've taught them to do. It's not who you are. You are the one looking through that mind that sees all that passing, right? That sees all of those thoughts. So learn how to redirect those thoughts away from this system of always looking for the contraction, always looking for what's wrong, always looking for the harshness, and trying to do something about that, because all you get is more of that. Start to look for the bliss. Start to look for the helpers. Start to look for the creators, for the creation, for the light, and for the expansion. Because when you do that and you feel that in the body, that leads you to the truth. And that leads you to yourself and to dropping into that and then to being that love in the world. That's how we create peace on earth, and that's how we create and be the love here. This is a journey that this lifetime is only a small blip in the grand lifetime of who you are as the soul, only a small blip, so don't waste it. I don't mean that as a pressure. I don't mean like, get on it. What I mean is enjoy it, be in it, love it, follow the bliss, follow the love. Is that how we're going to create more of that in this place? We keep focusing on the contraction, only going to create more of that. We keep focusing on what's wrong and all the war. Yes, we all know about the war. We all know that war needs to stop. But if we keep focusing there, we're only going to create more of it. We need to direct our attention towards those who are healing, those that are creating attention, and towards the light and towards the love, being that. And when we can each do that individually in our own lives, that's what creates the ripple into the matrix. Just like I said, So one life creates, if it goes out, it creates a surge in the matrix. But if one light brightens and enlightens, that also terrifies the entire matrix. So what you do as an individual matters. It matters.